Hello, everyone. It is now welcome to the final. Oh, Michael, we'll let you jump in a second here. Hello and welcome to the conversation today brought to you by NCBiotech, AgLaunch and AgStart for the final National AgTech Innovation Forum of the year. Thank you for joining us. Today, we're going to have a really awesome discussion with a bunch of really interesting panelists who I'll introduce in a second here. But first, I'm going to share my screen here and give you a little bit of an introduction. While I'm doing that, hopefully everyone can see my screen now. A couple of procedural notes to start us off. First, I want to note that today's session is being recorded. It will be posted at a later date in a couple of days at ncbiotech.org/events. So if you enjoyed this conversation and want to send it to someone, you'll be able to do so. Secondly, this is going to be a really engaging conversation. I encourage you to interact with us. Please use the Q&A feature of the Zoom webinar and reserve the chat feature for host announcements. And then without further ado, I'm going to jump into things. My name is Connie Bowen. I am the executive in residence at AgLaunch, one of the three partners who has put together this feature series. We would like to give a big thank you to all of our partners who've been engaged in making this year's series of webinars happen. If many of you have probably been around for some of these monthly forums, but again, if you've missed something and want to check it out, these forums are recorded and posted at NCBiotech's website. So you can go ahead and check that out. Thanks again to all the sponsors who made this happen and our partners. We do not have any upcoming events because we are officially at the time of year where I can wish you all a wonderful holiday season. We will certainly be involved in all sorts of great ag tech content with this wonderful group of partners next year. But at this moment in time, the only thing you have to put on your calendar is have a happy new year. And maybe look at some fun cows and Christmas sweater type gifts. I want to quickly give you a little bit of context on AgLaunch for those of you who haven't joined one of these sessions yet and might not know about AgLaunch. We are a farmer network at our core. We're a business network of progressive early adopter farmers who support and work with early stage entrepreneurs. We work all across kind of the value chain of ag. We work with tech entrepreneurs through our entrepreneurship programming and accelerators and boot camps. We work even earlier stage to create educational content and help to build the pipeline of future farmers and ag tech entrepreneurs. And we work along the value chain. As you'll see here today, you're joined by, we've got a kind of assortment of AgLaunch people, from farmers to vertically integrated value added production companies to our ag tech founders in the more traditional venture capital route. We are a nonprofit. We work quite a bit in rural economic development as well, because we are trying to transform agriculture to make sure that we're aligning all stakeholders and improving the world through ag. We are very, very farmer-centric. It's something that differentiates us. We run proof of concept trials. We might get into this a bit with Jairo and Michael. Our farmers, like Lauren, are involved in screening all of the companies with whom we work. And we are somewhat unique in that we have an agronomy support team who works with early stage startups. We work with Ag Ventures Alliance and Innova, who are farm aligned investors. And we build some really interesting projects in-house as well. Again, focusing on tech-centric tools that serve farmers. And so to learn more about us, you can check out our website, aglaunch.com, and always feel free to reach out and we can get more into that. But I don't want to spend too much more time on that. I want to get into the meat of today's conversation, in which we are going to talk about defining success in ag tech. And I am going to ask my panelists to turn on their cameras in a minute here while I introduce them briefly. We are so lucky to have Jairo Trad, the founder and CEO of Calimo, joining us here today from Argentina. We've got Lauren Steinlage from Flolo Farms. He's also pretty involved in Dawn Equipment, as well as just hosted a great event with Ag Soil Regen. We've got Danielle Buntyon joining us with Jade's Elevation, I'll let everyone introduce their company, so I'm keeping it short here. And finally, we've got Michael Ott, the founder and CEO of Rantizo, joining us here today. So without further ado, if I can ask all of the panelists to join me here, turn on your cameras, and we are going to dive right into this. I'm going to stop sharing so that we can have a little bit more of a see one another's faces and have a discussion. Again, audience members, please interact, engage. I will be monitoring the Q&A as we go through this, and I will integrate your questions, and we'll be sure to get to all of them. We should have plenty of time here. So first, though, I want to start off, we're going to cut right to the chase, no small talk. I'm going to ask each one of you, starting please with Jairo, then Michael, Danielle, Lauren. We're going to start with talking about your kind of reason for starting your company, your overall mission, and incorporating kind of the value side of why are you doing, I mean, you are each doing something that is rather difficult and not everybody is up for it. So what's your why? What are you doing at Calimo, Jairo?
I have two answers to that question. The first one is that because we believe that there is a lot of impact to be done in agriculture. Agriculture has is an unfair opportunity because you can do a lot of impact with very, very few customers because everything is so big. But the other answer, and that's probably the honest one, is that because life is so boring and doing a company is really, really fun. It's tough, but fun. Yeah.
I totally agree with that. Maybe just give us a little bit more context too, Jairo, on what actually are you doing at Calimo?
Calimo is a data solution for water management in agriculture. We use data to tell farmers how to do irrigation. We are based in Latin America, in Argentina, but we have a team of 60 people across 4 countries. This year, we will be saving our farmers 30 billion liters of water. That is kind of, I don't know, 2 months of the water usage of Memphis, for example. So it's a lot of water. And we have that unfair impact with 200 farmers. Yeah? We work with mid-sized farmers and small corporations across the region. And we're also working really hard with them to help them certify the water savings that they have and trying to help them get paid for that water savings. Yeah?
Excellent, thank you. We'll get more into the water side in a bit here. Danielle, do you want to jump in next? Tell us a little bit about your work at Jade's Elevation and yeah, where you're going with it.
Yes, you guys. Well, I am a hemp farmer at Jade's Elevation. I'm owner. We also do processing. So you would label us as a vertically integrated company. The reason why we went into hemp is because we wanted to have everybody have an experience with cannabis and cannabis products and understanding cannabinoid profiles and different ways that you could use this new crop. So I was very interested because it had over like 50,000 different uses for it and not just the typical one use that everybody knows of. So we really got into it and focused on education and research and development. We go and we help farmers and help retailers understand and learn ways that they could actually reuse their products, repurpose, and just demonstrate like how we created a vertically integrated system with really no waste. We really promote like, because cannabis, you can have a lot of waste as from plastics to things that you package it in, to your shipping. So we just really try to focus on doing that, and that's how we got into it. We really just wanted to have everybody learn about the different things that cannabis could help the world do.
Awesome. And maybe tell me a little bit, Danielle, too. I know we talked about this, about kind of your geography, but where you're based and kind of why that's significant for Jade's Elevation and your overall mission.
So yes, so we are located in Memphis, Tennessee, and one of the things that we really focused on was transportation and getting to reach out to a lot of different cities and states around the Tennessee area. So we are connected to Arkansas, Mississippi, Missouri, Alabama, all of those in the connection. And it's just a kind of intersection that we really hope to push in transportation and logistics to be one of those hubs that you look at as a place where you could ship and export the different cannabis products.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, now we're going to go over to our Iowa guys. Michael, why don't you jump in first? Tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're trying to accomplish at Rantizo.
Sure. Rantizo is a drone spraying company. We're selling a turnkey package directly to ag retailers for them to provide drone application services. So it's much more than just a drone. It's the training, support, a trailer, insurance, permitting, a reloading system, an app to get you out in the field, understand where your problems are and handle the billing, manage compliance, everything else there. And we did that we put that together after going through the AgLaunch program, kind of talking about getting focused on customer discovery and what do your customers want. And once we dialed in on ag retailers, heard that they wanted a turnkey solution. So that's what we set out to create. And we've done that. We've got about 60 contractors now, and we're permitted in 24 states. We're based out of Iowa with a contractor network spanning from California to Pennsylvania. And things are moving along. This year we did lots and lots of work on fungicide. That was by far our biggest opportunity. We've also done some cover crop seeding, actually for Lauren. We've done a lot of work on Lauren's farm. So that's been pretty good. We have been successful on the regulatory front, getting swarming permitted last year. So we're the only people nationwide that can fly with a greater than 1-to-1 craft to pilot ratio, meaning we're flying 3 drones with 1 pilot and a visual observer. So that's unique. And then just in the last couple of weeks, we announced that we're flying now legally the T30, which is a 3x larger version of the drone. So it's a 30-liter tank on the liquid side, actually 40-liter on the dry side. So you can put a lot of cover crop seeds or anything else that's in there. So those are the exciting things. And I did all this because I hate inefficiency. And I think that ag application is inherently inefficient when you're spraying the whole field for problems that exist in a portion of the field. And there's a better way to do it. I think a targeted application system is a much better way to go about things.
Awesome. I happen to agree on that one. I also have a beef with inefficiency. And I want to let Lauren, last but certainly not least, can you please introduce yourself, and let's talk a little bit about Flolo Farms and what you're doing there, and then I'll poke you on some other stuff here.
Thank you for having us, first of all, and appreciate the time and effort you guys put into this. But Lauren Steinlage, I'm a lifelong farmer, fabricator. A lot of what I've been able to do is due to necessity. We've always enjoyed pioneering some certain practices on the farm. We do tend to do things a little different. We're relay cropping, companion cropping. That's just pushed the envelope for us. And now that's led us to several environmental leadership awards. We were awarded the No-Till Innovator of the Year award last year, which has also led us now to engineering role at Dawn Equipment. But one of the fun things I get to do out of all of that is recently been asked the last couple of years to be a judge here on the Row Crop Challenge and stuff. So enjoy working with a lot of the technology and seeing where this stuff's all going.
And just for our listeners, the AgLaunch Row Crop Challenge is one of our accelerator programs. Lauren is one of our farmer selection committee members. Lauren, can you tell me a little bit more about kind of I think you have really interesting kind of a view around sharing ideas and you're so collaborative and engaged in so many different things, which is not always the norm for farmers actually, or at least it's not how everyone always thinks about farmers. So maybe tell me a little bit about how, you know, what your mindset is around kind of all these different idea sharing practices that you're involved in.
I guess for me, it goes back to a long time ago. We learned the value of just networking and sharing ideals. We can do a lot more together than we ever can on a solo basis. And, you know, it's led us to now, you know, we're working with several on farm here. We're working with several breweries, distilleries, bakers, and all that stuff. Now we want to start taking that to the next level and seeing how we can help expand some of that for other people, because I know I can't tackle it all myself, but networking has led us to a lot of neat opportunities.
Yeah, I totally agree. That brings me to Jairo. I want to flip it back to you here. And as we talk a little bit about why our companies exist, ultimately they all exist for our users, who tend to be groups of people. And we're, you know, often in startup land, and when we get into all the like jargony stuff that venture capitalists, I guess, like myself, kind of tend to tweet about, and that's nonsense. We talk about building community all the time, but that aspect is super real. And I know, Jairo, you've been doing a ton of work on building community. So I'm going to come around to everyone to talk about each individual stakeholder, but let's start here, Jairo. Who are you trying to serve at Calimo, and how are you actually bringing them around? Yeah,
we always were extremely focused on selling to farmers, selling directly to. Oh. Hi, my connection is a little bit spotty. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you. Okay.
Okay. Oh, so we have been always focusing selling directly to farmers. We try different channels, and we do have channel partners across the region, but they hardly work, and that's why we develop our own channel. And that's, we call it the Irrigation Academy. The Irrigation Academy is a content initiative. We release webinars. We found out that farmers discover Zoom in the middle of this pandemic. That was really, really good for us. We run between more than 5 live events per month, and we have on average between 150 and 200 farmers attending to each event. In November, we did 11 webinars, and it was a packed room on every one of them. So we, via that community, we have been able this year to double our acquisition in that channel, acquiring customer faster and getting a bigger ticket for each new customer that we get through our own channel when we compare it to a partner channel. Yeah? So for us, creating that community has been amazing. We call it a money machine because it's a lead generation space for us, but it's also really, really good. And we get love letters from farmers. We love the Irrigation Academy, it's so amazing. I downloaded Zoom to see these webinars and all that, and that's really fulfilling too. So it's really easy to get traction when you have a community behind your product. Yeah, and that's really cool.
Very cool. Yeah, I think that's a really interesting opportunity that not every startup is engaged with. Danielle, I want to turn to you here because you've got a slightly different kind of constituent audience, right? And you've almost got like, but I'll let you tell me, who are you, who is Jade's Elevation serving? Who are your stakeholders, and how are you bringing them around to be part of it?
We have a gauntlet of stakeholders. I always start off with, initially, we're a little backwards, where our consumers are our biggest stakeholders. The farmers also have a stake in it. We also do our wholesalers with retails, and just basically reaching out and really building an understanding in the South for what we do. Because I can go and travel around the world in many different places, and they totally understand how it's a crop, how it's grown, differences. But when you come to the South, I spend a lot of time just really with education, breaking down what the cannabinoid profiles are. What can you do with stalks? If this sat on the counter for so long, how are you storing it to make sure that you're preserving? Because our crop has a degradation, so it degrades over time. So we are strictly as I push more and more people to understand, you're on a time frame of how fast you can get that either processed or sold. And a lot of times from the gluttony of 2019, everybody wanted to jump in and grow a mass kind of production. I stuck with really doing and focusing on craft. And once you really focus on the artisanal side of it, creating things, you really get to meet and build, like you said, your community. Because people will come to you with problems that you never knew that you could resolve. But then you go and you dig a little harder, you do a lot more research for your customers to really help them understand the plant, and also you to provide better products for everyone all around. So our customers are first, farmers, our wholesale, retail establishments that carry our products. They really are the people who kind of keep us going and build our community.
Yeah, that makes, I want to tease out one of your points there a little bit further, just because I think it's so worth discussing. And I know it's relevant, I know it's relevant to Lauren, and it will become relevant to Jairo and Michael. I'm sure there's something I'm not thinking of here, but that educated, so I spent some time in the hemp CBD space, and like that education of the consumer and of the farmer and the producer is a massive barrier, and it's in a really noisy space, right? So I know, Jairo, you and I have talked a little bit about this idea of carbon markets are real hypey right now, right? Regenerative ag is a little bit hypey right now, right? So Lauren, I'm going to ask you to chime in on that one in a second. Drones, a little bit hypey actually, Michael, at least at some point. And then, but water markets also presumably are going to become kind of confusing when everyone wants to be a part of this market. How do you communicate authentically with your stakeholders and build trust in that? And anyone who wants to jump in here can go. I hate to do that on Zoom. Go ahead, Jairo.
The first key piece here is that you have to understand that when you're trying to sell something to farmers, especially technology, you're always doing education. You're more an education company than an AgTech company. Yeah? And you have to embrace that, and your team has to embrace that. And if you go to this, if you approach these initiatives with that mindset, and you do it because you believe that something that happened to us is we have had this discussion with the team is, should we invite competition to these events? And yeah, we do. We do invite to these webinars competition people that do the same that we do. And we have an honest discussion about what to do with irrigation, what do we believe is the best technology. Because when you see the adoption is really, really bad. Farmers, less than 10% of farmers are using any software / hardware technology. Yeah? And so there is so much space to everybody, for everybody in this here, that embracing education and being very honest about that you're here sitting at the table to create value. That's what we believe is important, and we're trying to approach this problem with that mindset.
Yeah, I'll jump in. I think there's a lot of building credibility, and you've got to be aware that, I heard this from an agronomist, if you screw a farmer over, expect to not go back to their farm for about 10 years. So if that happens, you got to be aware of it. So we've been careful we're doing our best to under promise and over deliver. Certain times you think something's going to work out really well and it doesn't. And when that happens, I've found just being honest, like, hey, here's what we thought, here's what we did, and it didn't work out that way. And generally people are understanding about new technologies and new things, but also you've eventually got to deliver. So that's the thing that as you're building that credibility, especially early on, it's really important to be a pretty upfront communicator. At our company, we have a principle of radical transparency. There's actually a book by called Principles, and that's one of them, where you can just say to someone like, hey, here's what I think the situation is, here's why, and maybe you caused it, and it's fine if you did, that's what it is, and let's address that and move on. You're not really blaming someone for something that's happened in the past, but if you go forward, that's a core value of what we what we do, and that's something that comes up fairly frequently. Just let's be radically transparent here and talk to people, because it's a better way to do things.
I would
Go ahead, Lauren.
communication is probably the biggest key factor in what Michael just said. I mean, if you're going to deal with me as a farmer, tell me what you think you can do and communicate that, and then keep that line of communication open, and we will go a long ways together. If you break that word, we're going to have a problem very quick. I mean, that is probably your general consensus amongst a lot of farmers. You know, word is your bond.
And I want to poke you a little further, Lauren, on two. I'll talk about your side of communication in a second. First, to Hiro's point around farmer, if you're a tech company, you're educating someone about your product. I'm also fairly certain that Michael didn't come in there and tell you exactly how something needed to be done, because I don't know how well that would have gone.
I boss Lauren around all the time. He loves it when I just come in. It's the best.
But yeah, I mean, there's a way to, this does come down to communication, but I think there's a phenomenon that I like to call tech bros fixing farming that doesn't actually work that well usually. So maybe, yeah, why don't you guys actually talk a little bit, Lauren and Michael, about how you did work together when you were kind of trying to figure out trials, and how that give take on education actually worked. Whichever one of you wants to chime in there first can. But how did you communicate, Michael, that this is better than something else? How did you say, hey, we're yet another drone company, but we're different, better, here's why? And why did that work?
Well, I'll go back to, I think the first application we did on Lauren's farm was a cover crop seed, maybe 2019. It was the one we did in a thunderstorm. And you called us, wanted it applied right before the rain came. And we realized, well, we can apply in the rain. So there's one of my favorite pictures of all time of what we've done. It's the Doppler radar, and you can just see that there's a terrible thunderstorm happening, and then there's our little blue dot like in the heat of the storm, and we're just dropping cover crop seeds out in the rain, and worked really hard on that. And then we didn't get great uptake from it, and then I talked to Lauren about it, and he's like, well, yeah, it didn't work for all these reasons. And it felt like we had a pretty frank and open conversation about, we tried something, it worked marginally well, and we figured it out. I don't know, your take on that may be different, but I'd love to hear your perspective.
Well, when I seek technology out, I mean, I know what we're getting into. And the main reason I start seeking technology out is when I see something I need done that I can't do today. And that's when I started looking at the drones, because with our crop, we cannot get in there with a row machine without damaging crops. When I started hearing the capability of a drone, that's when I start looking forward. But I'm rational enough, when we do have that little setback, I'm not going to blow a fuse. I'm going to reason it out, just like Michael said. We know what we're in for, and we know there's going to be some hiccups. We're not afraid to work through them, and that's the best advice I have for a lot of people that are looking at this. Just take that time and take a breath, reason it out. What was all the pluses and minuses, why something might work? That's how you build a relationship long-term, when you keep a cool head.
Something that I've noticed as well. So on the drone application side, in a flat, easy to get to field where you can position optimally, we can do 14 acres an hour. And that's our rate. We've done it lots and lots of times. And then when contractors get out there, they may be at 8, they may be at 10. And the reason is, it's not a flat, easy to get to field. There may be trees around, there may be mud that you can't drive over something. There's all sorts of issues. And what we have found is, when we are quoting productivity, we are accurate with what we're saying, but every time someone calls us in, almost every application that we do with a drone is a specialty situation. It's a side hill, it's a hard spot, whatever it is. So then when we get our productivity numbers back, they're lower because we're not doing a normal, easy, flat thing. And if you had a normal, easy, flat thing, you'd probably use a tractor. So that was something for us to learn. It was like, why are we so low? But then just being honest, like, hey, you gave us a challenging one. And I also coach our contractors when they're going through this, like, hey, this is our productivity. We know it. The harder it is, the slower it's going to go. And then when people get that up front, then they understand it a little bit better. But that was a lesson we had to learn. We were not perfect about that in the beginning, for sure.
Yeah, that's a great point. I want to return into the metrics conversation in a minute here, but first, Lauren, I want to let you chime in a little bit again on the communicating with who your really farm stakeholders are, but you can talk a little bit about Dawn too if you want to. But I would say that you're really an evangelist for regenerative agriculture and soil health, and you try a lot of really cool things. And in a way, you do this for technology too. How do you, like, who's your audience kind of for that, and why, and how do you navigate that? Because I think it's a difficult thing to do, actually.
I think a lot of times I'm guilty by association. I mean, I've never been one to get comfortable calling myself in the regenerative ag space until we now have test data that shows we're regenerative. That's a big topic of conversation the last couple of days. What exactly is regenerative ag? I don't understand the question. A lot of people ask me, when did you start regenerative practices? I truly don't know, because for me, it was a survival mode. And I try to tell people that is probably the most consistent thing I see amongst the successful people in regenerative ag space. It's survival mode for most of us. But to survive, we've had to reach out and find that technology that helps us get ahead of the curve.
So just by kind of being you and surviving is maybe the answer I'm hearing within that, is that's how you handle.
Fortunately, I've been able to travel all around the world, because I tell people I think I'm the worst speaker out there, but for some reason they keep asking me back. The best compliment I got over the last couple of days is you keep it real. You bring it right down to our level. And, I see a lot of guys that are out there speaking. They try to tell you what they think you want to hear. I don't do that. I mean, that's just, it hurts sometimes what I say, but I'm going to tell you the truth.
That is definitely true. And I would agree. You do keep it real. That's why we like you on all the panels we can have you on. I want to circle over to Danielle here for a second. Before we get into kind of the next phase, I want to talk about measurement after this. But Danielle, like I said, hemp and CBD communication and THC communication is like a difficult thing to educate, I would say, all stakeholders on. And so like tell us a little bit about how you navigate that. I'll be quiet and let you talk.
No, I'm just learning and not being afraid to learn from different spaces. I learn from everywhere. I just don't get education from cannabis farmers. I get information from farmers like Lauren, or farmers who have other kind of perspectives on how to produce, I call a specialty crop. Everyone calls it a row crop. 110% from me selling it and knowing price values. If the row crop value of it is not as expensive as me taking care of it and nurturing it. So the biggest thing that I put into perspective is for people to understand that it is a plant. So first, before you put any of the stigma or anything, it is a plant that's grown. You grow it in the soil. A lot of the properties are gained from what you put into it, how you manage it, and how you are going to dry and cure all the way to the end. So I really have people understand the process first, and then we break down how you use it, because I literally can sit and manipulate different things, different cannabinoids, and you literally go from being like a person who is a farmer to a chemist. So you actually have to just have them understand the chemistry of it, how you grow it, and really have them believe in you as a specialty farmer of your craft. So I really am a stickler of learning ways to grow, ways to produce that are safe, that really can, like Lauren said, survival mode. So 2019, everybody sold a lot of stuff. How do you get rid of your stuff? How is your product different from the 50 million CBD farmers in the world? So really looking deep within yourself and figuring out what works and what don't work, and being like sticking to it, like Lauren said, really sticking to your guns and knowing what will and won't work for even other people sometimes.
Awesome. Yeah, it can be an uphill battle. I want to switch tracks a tiny bit here, though everything will connect, and talk a little bit about measurement. So I'm living kind of a finance investment side of things. We often in like investor world measure success purely based on cash, actually, and there's all the usual financial kind of metrics, but I personally am also very interested in kind of the impact metrics side of things. And I know that for each of you, there are things you're measuring internally for your company and that you're communicating externally for your company. Some of them are much more numeric. So, talk about the cannabinoidal levels of different crops. I talk about the soil, the different soil nutrient levels within your soil. And that, so I'd like each of you actually to take your time, and I'm going to go around here. We'll go reverse order. So Michael, then Lauren, Danielle, Jairo. We're going reverse order on my Zoom screen, that is. And we will, and I'd like you to talk about what are you measuring for your company, and you can integrate for whom you're measuring that if you'd like. I think it's really useful, especially for the folks in the audience who are starting companies themselves or thinking about it, to understand like what are the things I have to keep track of, and some of them are quantitative and some of them are qualitative, and there's some are a little bit in between. So Michael, mind starting us off?
Sure. We always talk about SMART goals, which are specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely. And those are really important things to look at. And I love stats. So just digging into what's our dollars per job, number of jobs per year, average reloading time measured in seconds, productivity. I just have a whole dashboard of things that and another good one, average acres sprayed per support call. So things like that you can, once you understand the important metrics and decide on what really matters, then do things to adjust those, make sure that they're going as fast as possible. So for us, looking at productivity is huge. So activities like permitting larger drones, when we just tripled the size of that, that's really big. If you can reload faster, decreasing your amount of time on the ground, increasing your time in the air, that helps with productivity. Helping the contractors get more efficient in terms of one-click invoicing, so they don't have to spend time at the end of the job entering a bunch of data that they already have. Just make it so it can click, all that. So all those stats come together. So it's really a matter of organizing them in a smart way, and then finding the ones that truly matter, and then modifying your results to, modifying your efforts to get those results.
Can I press you a little bit more on how you got to some of these, like, one-click contracting for stakeholders? Was there a conversation, for contractors, was there a conversation there that happened, or did you just know that was a nice, like, how do you pick?
Yeah, so it starts with customer discovery and like just talking to your customers and excuse me, what are the things that, like, what are the major pain points? And what we heard was a lot of times when people are doing spraying, they're so busy in the July timeframe that they're wait to do their billing, wait to do their paperwork till a rainy day. So maybe it's the beginning of August, and they're like, well, what was the weather on July 7th when I was in Ainsworth, Iowa? Well, I don't know, but they're close enough. So there's a lot of inaccuracies and other things that go into that. So hearing that problem and then thinking about, okay, how can we use technology in a thoughtful way to solve it? And a one-click invoice, like we can pull weather information. We are in the app. We know exactly where we are. We've got, we need to list all these details out in order to make the spray. We just pull that all into one thing and then boom, we're done. Okay, that makes it easy. So really it's understanding the real problem and then using technology to solve that particular issue.
Awesome. Okay. And Lauren, what are you measuring? Why?
I'm sitting here thinking, where do you want to start? For me, I'm going to start on the manufacturing side. When I took the job with Dawn, there was the hardest thing to decipher is justification of my job. Well, we decided very early in the game, I'm not into sales, but it's going to take happy customers, satisfied customers to justify my job. So a lot of what I'm out there doing is going out and listening to the customers, finding out exactly what they want, how they want it, and most pertinently is what do they actually need? Because a lot of the guys I'm dealing with are on the forefront and the cutting edge. So, trying to figure out what's the next best thing. Then I'll back up now to the farm side.
Wait, hold on, Lauren, real quick, before you go into the farm side, give us a line or two on Dawn, just because I don't know that we've gotten to it. So what does Dawn Equipment Company do?
Is a farm equipment manufacturer that started out in planter attachments, stuff like that, but now it's evolved into Dawn itself is heavily invested into electrohydraulics. And me as a high school graduate never thought I'd be studying fluid dynamics and all this crazy stuff, but it is kind of fun. On the flip side, underground ag is actually where my focus is. We are heavily invested into regenerative ag products. That's kind of been my forte, how to build stuff solid, simple, quick to market. Let's fill the void. I hear a lot of people worry about patents and all that stuff. Sometimes you have to be, flash to market is more critical than having that protectable patent on some of that stuff. So
thank you.
Answer
Thank
your
you. Now I'll
question.
let you, yeah, perfect. And I'll let you go back to farm there. And I want to say, audience members, do keep the questions coming. I promise I will get to them. I see them coming in. But yeah, Lauren, what about on the farm side?
On the farm side, I thrive I always tell people I thrive in stress. So I'm kind of the guy that's probably going to be pushing the envelope there a little bit. We really like doing the food grade stuff like that focuses on quality. I can make more premium on quality. The argument we're having right now that I talked about the last couple of days is my son-in-law. They're a very conventional farmer. I'm very unconventional. So for me moving forward, the challenge is going to be how to get him to get off the quantity mindset and go more to the quality mindset. Make more with less is where I push a lot on the farm side. Now on the value added side, a lot of what we're really pushing through the network and stuff like that is, again, focus on the quality, bring more people in, keep expanding our product lines and stuff like that. So, there's a lot of different ways I can go on a lot of things usually, but that adds to the complexity and the fun to where we're at. So probably the other thing I'd really like to address is the personal matter. Family is a big part of my story, and I always tell everybody put that first. A lot of my decisions are made on the 100-year rule, and what's the 100-year rule? And ask yourself every decision you make in 100 years, did it matter?
That's a good rule. I'm gonna have to add that to my list. All right, Danielle, what about you? What are some of the things you're measuring to make Jade's Elevation expand and grow?
So one of the big things we measure is cannabinoid content in your crop. If your cannabinoid profile is off or too high, you have to burn it. So we produce our own crops, so we really source the seeds that will allow us to be compliant. So that is one of the first things we measure in anything is how much THC do we have? And then we further go on. One of the big things being vertically integrated, we process our own material. So I wanted a very luxurious, as I would say, processing that can involve you doing it by hand. So what we had to do was figure out how we could crunch all of that processing in a time, but still be able to process the amount of crop that we needed. So we really measure how many pounds we can produce in an hour, how much we can extract. Then once you finish extracting it, you go and you send it off for testing, and you're hoping that you didn't concentrated too much that would now make your oil hot. So I have to always bounce in between regulatory numbers of, is it permissible for a plant, or is it permissible for when you break it down into a concentrate? And then you also have to retest for when you put it into your product. So we measure for a lot of things that are more so regulatory. And then when we do processing, how much time does it take to process something? And then what would that relate to our price to our customer? So everything kind of relates back to our price point that we sell it.
Awesome. And then what about on the more like qualitative side, as you're kind of thinking about growing your company? What are kind of the goals that you maybe measure with parentheses there? But
so one of the biggest goals is just consumer recognition of what you're doing. I always like to know if people can know our product or recognize like something we've done, just to kind of see if that is something that's worthwhile. And even talking to people to be able to like tweak your products and see if it's something that they like out in the market. So really being able to measure like the quality that you put out there, and also the quality of service, because this is very, customers really, really kind of dig you in, and you have to appease the customer, but also appease your vendors too. So happy vendors, people who would always return and continue to work with us. If we sourced from a farmer, are they continuously bringing us quality products, and how much can they bring in to match with our demand of selling?
awesome. And Jairo, what about you? What are the things you're measuring?
So we try to implement the idea that everybody has a number in the company, and we are almost 60 people, so we measure a lot of numbers. But at first we measure funnel, the acquisition, marketing, qualified leads, sales, qualified leads, and new customers. Then we measure how much new money from returning customers we get, how much money for new customers we get, invoices and all that. And then we have some product metrics. We're a software solution, so we mostly measure user behavior on our product side. How many users we have returning every week, what's the ratio between monthly active users and weekly active users for the product. We also measure how the interaction between our team is going. We have a culture, an HR tool, and we measure how many interactions we have on that HR tool. And then customer health score and some other service KPIs that we use to measure how our customers are feeling about the product. And more on the soft side, we try to use the Sustainable Development Goals to measure our impact. We are big in the Sustainable Development Goal number 6, that is the water-related one. And we try to measure everything according to the kind of the framework that the UN provides there.
Awesome. One thing I noticed that none of y'all mentioned as a metric for success, but something that I do want, it is relevant and important, is kind of the fundraising metric. I think sometimes in kind of like press release world, we're like, oh, this company's raised millions of dollars, they must be such a success. No one mentioned that here, but I do want to listen to the audience here. It is really a relevant part of building your company. So, and part of my goal in bringing this panel together is we have 4 really successful ag entrepreneurs. In ag, I put tech in parentheses there because to me, it's really complicated technology. Actually, having the math on figuring out CBD concentrations or THC concentrations when you extract stuff is almost as complicated, I would say, as the fluid dynamics stuff that honestly I barely got my engineering degree because of. But I want to do a little bit of a contrast here. Not everyone in this panel has raised or will raise venture capital type funding, but let's quickly address that. So Jairo and Michael, you've both raised some funds. Maybe give us a quick summary of that. And then Danielle and Lauren, tell us a little bit about how you guys built a business with different types of financing, or like revenue, for example.
I can jump in. Quilimo has raised $2.2 million, and we are in the middle of a Series A raise right now for $5 million. We have this, and I want to add something about this. Fundraising is not a milestone. I mean, we have this internal rule that we don't celebrate fundraising. We celebrate almost everything, but not fundraising, because it's a tool. It's just a tool. It's money that you're going to spend to do something around your product. It's irrelevant for us. It's relevant because you need it, but this is irrelevant for our team. Yeah.
Awesome. And Michael, want to add anything here?
Yeah, so we've raised a fair amount of capital. Most recently, about exactly a year ago, a $7.5 million Series A, led by Bayer, with groups like Fall Line and Nova, Sukup Manufacturing, KZ Valve, ISA Ventures, Egg Ventures as well. So we've had a fair amount of success fundraising, and I think you're right that it's a thing that needs to be done so you have oxygen to keep going, and it can be very challenging. So it's something that if you're in the right spot with the right potential returns, there are groups that are available. A thing that I've found, there's lots and lots of accelerators now, and they're accelerating ideas. And I think people need to recognize it is truly just an accelerator. It's not a success generator, because there's lots of ideas, many of which may not turn into something. And if you accelerate that to the end and it doesn't work, that's a perfectly fine outcome, because then you're like, okay, we did it. We tried some things, it didn't work. That's okay. Let's celebrate that you got to the end of that goal and then go to the next thing. You either pivot and go on from there, or you change strategies completely with what you're doing. But I think those are important mentality aspects to have.
For sure, I couldn't agree more with that. And even with venture capital and actually deploying cash, it's high risk. It's not always going to pan out. But as long as you've done the things to test if it will, that was the point of that capital. But it's not for every type of operation. So I don't know if Lauren, Danielle, you want to chime in here a little bit about how you've gotten your businesses going and about the alternative route.
Yeah, mine was very alternative. I sold a house to get the funding for my business. And everybody would say that's crazy, but I was lucky in my situation. I don't recommend everyone do that, but I acquire a large amounts of, I kind of like buy real estate like I buy bags, because I know that is an asset, and I wanted to really prove my proof of concept to myself first before I searched for investors. So I took the equity out of my home and put that into just buying the equipment and developing the land. And then we went for a grant route, obtaining grants from different organizations, and also really working with the value added of our product line and just really pushing the product line out into the regional areas. We competed with High Times. We do a lot of just product placements in more places than just the regional areas. So we really kind of also look at our revenue that we get from selling our products to boost and kind of push us forward. So I took a different route only because my product was just a little different, and coming from a corporate world, telling everybody you want to be a farmer is a little different to kind of get your foot in. So I just wanted to really back myself and support my idea first and just get a big proof of concept before I presented it to investors. But now, as you kind of look, you most definitely need investors when you actually have a product that's good and you want to expand. So I always say, don't start like me, go a little better. But I really just couldn't see saying, hey guys, I want to leave corporate America to be a farmer. And no one was like, backing it up. So.
Fair enough. But maybe Danielle, can you, where did you go to for grant funding?
So we went to the USDA AgLaunch, and we also did the coronavirus fund for the state of Tennessee. So we went to the local Department of Ag. They helped a lot and really putting us in position to understand our options as new farmers. So I really was in contact with my regional director, Ro, for the Department of Agriculture, and he was very like, hey, this grant is available, or no, you guys are under certain rules and you can't. So a lot of times with hemp and CBD, we weren't able to apply for grants, but as they're becoming more understanding of the product, they have a lot more grant opportunities that they're providing for new farmers, especially new farmers getting into the business.
Awesome, thank you. And I'm sure the grant side of things, we're going to want to talk about policy in a second to go into Paul's question. But first, Lauren, maybe talk a little bit about how, yeah, you can talk Don and or Flolo, but
I'm sitting here thinking about writing a romance novel about how to court a banker. I mean, that's generally how we did most of ours. I mean, the farm has just had to strictly figure out how to make things work, make things happen, and generate profits. But you know, we did, as some of our expansion opportunities, we have looked down the grant opportunities, and I'm going to say the key there is to probably find the right people to help you with the grant programs. You know, because we tried to persevere once upon a time and write our own grant proposals and stuff like that. Well, it's pretty disheartening when you get a notice that you were too innovative for an innovation grant. So, but on the other side, I'm sitting here thinking about how me and Michael can team up to have a venture capital farm.
Venture capital farm, did I hear, or firm? Because a venture capital farm could be really interesting.
You could generate some capital and have a cool farm.
Okay. Go ahead, Michael.
I just said I'm in.
Okay, yeah, I'm interested too. So okay, but so it sounds like both Lauren and Danielle, I can only assume because you're in the industry that I've also looked at grants in. You've had some issues here. Grants aren't necessarily as perfect as they could be, let's say. That stems into policy around ag tech probably isn't as perfect as it could be. So Paul, we have a question here from Paul in our audience. What policy changes could be implemented to increase the success of farming, agribusiness, consumer access to improved agriculturally derived products? And we could go in a lot of directions with this one. Anyone want to chime in first?
Banking for me. Banking, it's hard. They don't want to give me a bank account. They don't want to hold my money. They freeze my accounts. I've had 3 bank accounts, 4 merchant processors. So just, if you give us leeway to grow a crop, give me leeway to put my money in a bank that really wants my money. I promise we're good for it. So it's just kind of that thing with laws is, first it was illegal, then it was legal, and now the banking, regardless of how legal it is, they won't let you always hold an account. So banking laws for me.
Yeah, that would help. Who else wants to chime in here? I mean, maybe Jairo, maybe talk a little bit on the conservation side of things too. Like, are there policy changes that and also you're obviously operating in a different policy environment actually than the other.
Don't get me started on the policy in Latin America, but you guys are complaining, but it's a little bit harder here. But what I can say is, venture-backed startup, I believe we don't get to complain because we have access to capital, and the capital is fairly loose on the rules and what they and they have a lot. And so I don't complain about the access of capital. It will be always it's important, and we believe around policy that finding ways to compensate farmers for being innovative and for doing the right thing for the environment has the best return on investment to any other climate action policy that you might try to get. So I would love to see government exploring that road, because there's a big opportunity in carbon sequestration and water savings around farming, and we haven't seen a lot. We have seen some small programs, but a bigger program on different countries would be really good.
I think I can piggyback on what he just talked about. I mean, I think first and foremost, we as farmers need to become more proactive and tell people what we're doing on the positive aspect. But then, you know, when the carbon concept comes into play, he hit it. I mean, the water quality is probably more of a tell than the whole carbon sequestration thing that everybody's talking about. You know, Jay Fear says it best: solve the whole water cycle, we solve the carbon cycle. So, you know, I can go get an $8 test and tell if I got quality water versus all the money that's been spent on carbon.
So from our perspective, the timing on policy, policy changes and policy updates is so slow. So we're dealing with both the EPA and the FAA. And just this couple of weeks ago, we did a 3-generation update. So going from a 10-liter drone, past 16, past 20, up to 30. The FAA kind of caught up to real time, which was a big change, and we were happy about that. But we could have we could have done that this year. So I'll give you a good stat. This 30-liter drone globally has sprayed 297 million acres, and it's sprayed 6 legally in the United States. So that's 297 million to 6. And that is due to regulatory slowness. And those are the type of things that you talk to policymakers and like, oh yeah, we agree, that's an issue. And then, 9 months later, we'll start thinking about how we can solve this. And we're working with some groups on the drone spraying task force side with chemical companies, others, to improve upon this. But it's a really big slowdown that it stifles innovation, it hurts progress, it hurts farmers, and I don't know that there's necessarily a change, because it's never going to get faster, but at least making people aware of it certainly seems to help.
Yep, planning is everything. So I want to give audience members, you have one last chance here if you want to throw stuff in the Q&A. Otherwise, I want to wrap with a kind of final question. Again, I'm going to go around to each one of you. So we've talked a little bit about how we are thinking about defining success. But what does success look like a couple years out from now, 5, 10 years for your company? What are you doing? What have you impacted? What have you changed? Danielle, I know I want to hear you talk a little bit about brick and mortar and kind of converting into that. Where do you end up? I know, Michael, you've got big drones spraying more acres, but yeah, you'll talk about that more eloquently than I can. And so Danielle, why don't you jump in first, and then I'm going to pass over to Michael, and we'll go over to Jairo and Lauren, and anyone who throws questions in the Q&A, I'll try to sprinkle it in as we go here.
So kind of our big push is to mainly be around, continue to push our product line, our expansion of our education, and like she said, also moving to brick and mortar, also being able to really put our brand name and our passion for cannabis out there in the world, just more than online and in wholesale, other brick and mortars. So really having something that we can bring our customers to and really focus around and garner our community, and also expand those franchise style stores into other locations throughout the United States to really kind of drive our product line into more states, into more locations, and into more knowledge of people. So just really expanding on a regional, global front, and putting stores into place.
Yeah, I'd say ours is going to come down to product market fit, showing that the people that use our product have asked us to keep coming back. They think they're getting a fair deal. They think they're excited about what we can do in the future. That's probably the biggest one for us. And then as we look at more fully automating the process, so we've got autonomous drones flying, they fly themselves. We can get to autonomous reloading, autonomous invoicing, autonomous everything else, refueling, all of that. That's really the long-term goal that that could come together. Obviously, there's a lot of steps to get along that process, but we're excited about what could be.
I know I was talking to my family has a farm up in Kossuth County in Iowa too. And I was talking to Barry the other day about your drones, Michael, and he's a little bit of a not progressive kind of guy, but it's getting real to him. So it might be closer than we think. Hyro, what about you?
I'll tell one funny story. We had an investment from a group, and there was a pretty crotchety old farmer that was really, really against us. And he was the one that voted against everything. And then a couple of years later, after we came back with some pretty good results, he came up to me and said, I was pretty strong against this. It might not be the worst idea. Which,
that's a high compliment.
Not the worst idea is pretty good.
Hyro, tell us a little bit about the future in a world with water markets. And then Lauren, fair warning, I am going to give you the last word here and ask that you answer our last audience question on what technologies should we invest more in for sustainable ag farm profit. So you're gonna have the last word on that one. But first, Hyro, where's Kilimo and what have you enabled in the next 5 years?
We have a number for that also. So in the next 10 years, we will be saving 4 trillion liters of water a year. That's the amount of water that a mid-sized country uses. So that's our goal, and we're pretty aligned around that. And in the mid to short term, we want to get farmers paid for using our solution, and we are almost there. And that's happening soon, because they are the biggest ally around this climate problem big climate problem that we have right now. And we know the right stakeholders that can help us get our farmers paid for being sustainable.
Awesome. Lauren, wrap us up here.
Where should you invest? I'm going to say anybody invested in efficiency, and that would come right down to the water use, chemical use, right down to the field level. I mean, conversation I was in yesterday, an equipment manufacturer, some kind of consultant he asked me, why am I so pro autonomy? I said, because I don't see the kids of today wanting to sit out in the tractor all day. He's like, oh, but don't you feel that rush? I don't feel that rush. It goes back to what I said earlier. Give me a piece of technology that can do something better that I can't do today. It'll be on my farm.
Love it. And where is your farm in 5-10 years, Lauren? Or maybe 100 years, if that's the test you're using.
The kids will be taking it, and I'll be head peon and hopefully building some more equipment.
Awesome, I love it. Well, thank you all for joining us today. This has been super fun. I appreciate everyone joining us. And this recording will be made available. So if you want to share it and recap with colleagues or friends, feel free to check out ncbiotech.com, and this will be posted later. With that, I'm going to say big thank you to our panelists, Hyro, Danielle, Michael, Lauren. We really appreciate you here at AgLaunch. Thank you to our hosts at NCBiotech here for organizing this. And everyone have a wonderful new year. And I'm sure we'll have another great series of events in the future that will bring us all together.